accomplished people. I'm glad you're here. It's wonderful that we can welcome home and honor and celebrate former Lane student Tonya Alanez, who has earned national distinction as a professional journalist. Tonya was a member of the team of journalists at the South Florida Sun Sentinel in Fort Lauderdale that won the 2019 Pulitzer Prize for public service, quote, for exposing failings by school and law enforcement officials before and after the deadly shooting rampage at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School, end quote. The February 2018 massacre left 17 people dead, another 17 injured. The deadliest shooting at a high school in United States history. The award recognized the newspaper team's principled questioning of school and government officials to determine why students and members of the public were not adequately protected. I'm eager to hear from Tonya today how she and fellow team members went about their reporting. I remember Tonya as a hardworking student, always ready to learn. As a newspaper staff member, she was consistent and principled, and she believed in training and in teamwork. When she became Torch editor-in-chief back in 1999, the 1999 to 2000 school year, Tonya attracted, organized, and led a team that sometimes numbered as many as 36 students. I was looking through, the only record I have in my file is from February of 2000, and in that case, I count 27 students on the staff. That's amazing. You don't see that hardly anywhere, especially at community college newspapers. I'd like to introduce production advisor Dorothy Warren to my left, and unfortunately Jan Brown, the advertising advisor, could not be here. My name is Pete Peterson, and I was the news editorial advisor. And we taught the basics to the Torch staff, but Tonya led the staff in applying those concepts each week. All right, come on in. She inspired them by the quality of her own writing and reporting, and through her careful, thoughtful criticism, she and her team members taught each other how to improve week after week after week. Under Tonya's leadership, the Torch staff won a record 23 awards in the 2000 Oregon Newspaper Publishers Association's Collegiate Day competition. It was a true team effort. After completing her associate's degree at Lane in 2000, Tonya earned a bachelor's degree in journalism from the University of Oregon in 2003, and with a special distinction. She was named the outstanding graduate in the School of Journalism's news and editorial sequence. Again, out of all those graduating students, they singled out Tonya for her work, her dedication, her thirst and eagerness to learn. Tonya's professional career then began with some extra training at the LA Times and internships at the Oregonian and the Press Journal in Vero Beach, Florida. And then she began her full-time reporting career at the Sun Sentinel. Yesterday, Tonya gave a keynote address at the University of Oregon's School of Journalism Fall Media Day for high school students. There were how many in the audience?
845, and there were middle schoolers too.
People, students in the audience, and from all reports, they were on the edges of their seats listening to Tonya's personal story, as well as the story about the coverage of the terrible massacre. So now we look forward to her remarks about the Sun Sentinel's responsibilities to report and assess its community's policies and practices that were tested and even exposed during that terrible school shooting event in 2018. Please welcome Tonya Alanez.
Thank you, Pete. All right, well, thank you for coming. Really, really appreciate you being here. Tonya Alanez. I'll just start with, I'm a crime and breaking news reporter, and I also do a lot of general assignment, which basically means I'm a jack of all trades, and any given day I have to become an authority on something new and often something I know nothing about. So let me just get through here a little bit. These are my notes from yesterday. So yeah, from Torch to U of O, but I didn't move to Eugene to go to school. I moved here to be a hippie and live in the woods and have a baby. And along the way, I started taking classes at Lane, and on my bus rides here, the Torch would sometimes be on the seat, and I would read it and notice that, oh, they have ads looking for reporters. And I'm like, oh, so cool. I always like to write. I worked on school papers and stuff. So I went to the next meeting and walked away with my first assignment right off the bat. And then within like 3 months, I was news editor. And then toward the end of the school year, I was running for editor-in-chief the next year. And we really had the most awesome team. I think that was it was like I didn't only fall in love with journalism and newspapering, but it was such a cool team, and we did such good work together, and that was really rewarding. And I'm Facebook friends with several of my former Torchies, and one of them came to the keynote yesterday. So it's really been an awesome, awesome path that I never could have imagined. And by the time I graduated from U of O, I was a non-traditional student. I was older than everybody. I had 2 kids. I was a Saturday marketeer. I made beadwork jewelry. And yeah, by the time I graduated, I was 34 years old. So it's never too late, it's never too late, it's never too late. Well, I want to hammer that home. Yeah, let's see. Keynote. So I guess right now, let's just look at the first video on the PowerPoint, and then I'll talk about our work. It should come up toward the beginning. I think it's, no, before there. It should be right before the horrific day.
Okay, it's not showing up.
That's weird, it did yesterday. Okay. Okay, let's click through until something will work that's an audio, kind of an interactive or video. Okay. So this, yeah, let's start it playing. We actually have had a number of police agencies who have asked permission to use this as a training tool for their departments for first responder, mass shooting, active shooter situations. And I really feel like our digital multimedia presentation really just added a lot to our winning entry. And I just really want to stress that if you've got any aptitude for data journalism, interactive journalism schools, pursue it and do it, and there are jobs out there for you. There's a lot of jobs. And I also want to get in that journalism is the only career I can think of where you could hit the ground really fast and really hard, really young. We love summer intern season. And if we get a sense that you get it, then we'll trust you and we'll send you to really, important things that, that matter. You could be, quoting the governor or something. And our summer intern 2 years ago, Meryl Cornfield, she was really, really good. We really liked her. Tons of front page stories. And she was a senior, so she had to go back to UF and finish her senior year. She graduated last May, and by this fall, she's a staff writer at the Washington Post on the investigations desk. So look her up, look up her Twitter. She is so young, but fantastic and good, and that's just what I want to emphasize. You can really be entrusted with a lot at a very young age. Okay, and let's see. So journalism drew me in. It's never static. I'm always learning. And that's what I really love about it. And then to me, I always liked to write, but once I realized journalism was a career that was doable or it was reachable. Because I grew up on a reservation in Washington State, Yakima Reservation. I didn't know journalists, I didn't know reporters. I knew mechanics and grocery checkers. And I became the first in my family to get a college degree. And but it was what really drew me in. I love to write, but it was the sense that I was also serving some sort of civic duty or a social service. I feel like it's a social service, a lot of what we do. And that's the part that was super, super appealing to me. And I've found journalism is a lot like the Dr. Seuss book, Oh, the Places You'll Go, because it has truly taken me a lot of places. I've covered murder trials, death sentences, and executions. I've witnessed 2 executions by lethal injection and then reported on deadline. I spent a day on a ride-along with paparazzi in LA. I've witnessed an autopsy. I got to cover the March for Our Lives in Washington, D.C., which is hands down the best assignment I ever had. It was the most inspiring, touching, it was awesome. I was so glad to be there. And journalism even took me to Pakistan. I went with the DC organization, ICFJ, International Center for Journalists. Our newsroom, we do a lot of hosting foreign journalists, a lot of Russian and Pakistanis. And I'm kind of the newsroom ambassador. I'm the one who picks them up at the airport and keeps them on, makes a schedule for them and makes sure they have things to do and they're getting a really good exposure and taste of this. So after hosting maybe 4 international journalists, we got an offer. Did we have a staff member that wanted to go to Pakistan as part of this it was almost 2 weeks. And it wasn't to go be immersed and work in a newsroom, but it was to just visit all these different aspects of Pakistan and see what journalists are up against there. And so we met with ambassadors, we met with NGOs, we went to orphanages, we went to a women's college and did a Q&A with a media class. We went to newspapers, TV, stations. We went to a bombed out newsroom. We were there I think we were there in January, and in December, this newsroom had been bombed. And we went and sat in on their news meeting, and their news conference room was basically a bunker. They'd taken out all the windows, boarded them all up, and we were in a little concrete bunker with a conference table having a news meeting. And also, I think just 6 weeks before we got there, 3 of their staffers had gotten executed on assignment, which Taliban eventually took responsibility for. So, it was really eye-opening, really, really, it just really drove home even more the power of journalism, the importance of journalism, and what so many other countries they're up against. So how we got to the Pulitzers. Parkland Massacre is the most tragic event in Broward County's history, and it happened right in our backyard. Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School is only 11 miles from our newsroom. It's right in our backyard. So early on, we were after all the breaking news part of it, people started to complain, like, why don't you just leave it alone already? Like, let people heal. Why don't you stop, like, picking at the scab and just, like, but we're just like, no, there's more to learn. Why'd this happen? And so that's what drove us. We were seeking the truth about how and why 17 staff and students could be slaughtered in a school considered the safest in Florida. It was our duty to help the community and the country minimize the risk of recurrence. Healing, we believed, could only occur if underlying problems were exposed and explained. And from the outset, we were met with resistance and secrecy. In the end, we exposed a number of sheriff deputies who failed in their responsibilities that terrible day. We revealed the shocking number of people who failed to lock down the school during the shooting. We explained how the FBI mishandled tips about the school shooter and also uncovered what seemed like a gazillion red flags attached to this kid. And our mission was not to place blame, but rather to unearth what we could learn from a tragedy with such an eye-popping list of missed warning signs. Now, if we just go a little bit through the slideshow, this one I think you have to scroll down, but this is one of the really cool interactives. And so this is like a timeline, and it just kind of breaks down into what's going on. Kind of Nicholas Cruz comes in an Uber. One of the security monitors actually sees him get out of the monitor and is like, oh, that's Medina. He's going, oh, what's that kid? What's that kid? And he radios his other monitor and is like, what's that kid? Crazy boy, the one we always thought was like most likely to be a school shooter. Well, Medina watched him get out of the Uber with a big duffel bag and said he looked like he was on a mission. And they made some eye contact. Medina was on his golf cart, and he didn't approach him. I don't know why. It all could have been averted if Medina had approached that kid and just been like, what are you doing here? You don't go to school here anymore. He'd been expelled. He was beyond. He wasn't a senior anymore. He was an adult now, and he had no business there. So when I wrote that story, when that came to us, we learned that through Medina's sworn deposition or a sworn statement to police. And when we got that and saw that, nobody knew that. The parents and families didn't know Medina had seen Nicholas Cruz arrive and that they had made eye contact, and he didn't do anything. That was it was really startling. And that's just the tip of the iceberg of all the ways this could have been prevented. So my 3 entries in the ones that I was most involved with in our prize-winning submission, and it's about 20 components in all. I wrote the crazy boy story. Cruz killed 11 on the first floor, goes to the second floor, no one dies there, gets up to the 3rd floor and kills 7 more and injures a whole lot more. And it was Dana Banker, our managing editor. She started going like, what was it? Like, why did he even make it to the 3rd floor? How much time was that? So we started dicing it down and made a timeline and dissecting it, and where was Medina then? And we could really just tie it all together and connect all these dots. And we were able to start to see who was where, when, and who did what, and who didn't do things. And so our editor was like, she had this idea, and so it became what happened on the 3rd floor, what went wrong on the 3rd floor. And it was months and months of kind of building it, but then that story just came out fantastically. And it was just really, I'm really, really proud of that story. And then toward the end of the year, Dana, on the night before New Year's Eve, she gets the grand idea that we should do what went right on the second floor. Nobody got killed there. And she left me a big, long voicemail that night. She was all jazzed and like, oh, we got this. And we can do it tomorrow. We can do it like a daily. You did the third floor. It'll be easy, blah, 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 blah. And I'm just like, oh, I'm so screwed on New Year's Eve. And I was in the newsroom until 11:45 p.m. getting that story finished up, final edit, to go print it, get it down to print. And I was driving home on I-95 as fireworks were going off all over. Happy New Year! But if you look on the timestamp on that story, it's 11:45 p.m. So, but Dana, she really drove our coverage and envisioned a lot of it. You know, she really led us, and she was fantastic. She was really visionary, I feel like. So let's scroll a little more, and if you have questions along the way, ask them. And
Tonya, where did you get these images? From the video system at the school?
School, yeah. And Florida has fantastic public record laws. I don't know. Friends who have moved away and gone to other states to work are like, we don't know how good we have it.
Terms of access,
Of what's a public record.
and you don't have to wait days to get the information either, I assume.
We have to fight sometimes. We sued the school board a few times last year.
Say that again, you had to sue the school board because?
They went and coughed stuff up. At first, they were just like blanket, no, we're not releasing any more information, nothing. It was like they thought there was a Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School exemption or something. And we used our lawyer a lot last year. She fought for us a lot. And I want to say another thing I love about my newspaper, Sun Sentinel, South Florida Sun Sentinel. Our publisher is a woman. Our editor-in-chief is a woman. Our managing editor is a woman. Most of our department heads are women, including our sports editor. Our editorial department editor is a woman. And
What are you trying to say?
and our attorney is a woman. We're just like, we're estrogen strong is what I'm trying to say. And if you look at like the bylines that, you know, ended up being the bulk of our entries, we're mostly women. And when we went to Columbia for the Pulitzer luncheon, we were about 15 of us, and I think 4 were men. So just saying. Just a little plug. And it's very different. We are having a female publisher and editor-in-chief. That's only about a little less than 2 years. That's new for us. It'd always been men. It'd always been white men. No offense. So, let's see, where else do we want to go? All right, let's just keep scrolling, see what we come up next. Taylor was the other school monitor that Medina called when Taylor was in the building and started hearing shots fired. He ran and hid in a janitor's closet.
What was his role again?
Campus security monitor. Not like the school SRO deputy with a, he was like a part-time coach, security monitor. I mean, he got paid terribly. When I learned what his salary was, I was like, oh my God, how can you live on that in Florida? But,
Did he carry a firearm?
No. So yeah, all this started coming, different, we'd get a lot of document dumps once the court part of this started moving. In Florida, once discovery is released to the defense, it becomes public record. So we're entitled to a copy too. And so that's where we're getting a lot of this stuff. The governor had created like a fact-finding commission, the MSD commission. It was parents, law enforcement, all kinds of people. And they would do they were doing their own investigation. And then they'd have like monthly meetings where they'd present what they learned. As soon as they presented what they learned, that was public record. So we're just like bringing it in. And we were making so many public records requests that we eventually had one of our data journalists keep a spreadsheet of what we were requested and when and what we were told and how long it's been and all this kind of things. It was like got really, really organized and detailed how we went at this.
Were members of the school board angry with you, upset with you, annoyed because you were bothering to was the school board upset with you because you were actually requesting public documents?
Yeah. School board there was so much animus by the time it was Pulitzer season. The school board wrote a 10-page letter to the Pulitzer committee saying how crappy and biased and terrible we were and all these examples and this story and this and that. We thank the Pulitzer committee for letting us know and allowing us to write a 10-page rebuttal, and we took every one of those things down. What had happened before that it took a while before we learned this. 2 of the fathers of children who were murdered at school that day, they wrote a letter to the Pulitzer committee recommending that we win a Pulitzer.
Did you win it?
Yeah. They're like, like only they know how to get a lot of this information, and we were learning from it. These were things we didn't know. They didn't know Medina had seen crews arrive. And then there was just more and more things, and then all kinds of little things. And
what was the primary complaint from the school board against the Sun Sentinel?
Wait a second.
It's kind of like a blanket.
Ask the question again, please.
So what was the primary complaint from the school board against the Sun Sentinel? Their primary.
Basically, they were, it was like a blanket. We're protecting its privacy rights. The records you are requesting are from when he was a minor, from when he was a kid. It's sensitive stuff. It's mental health stuff. It's HIPAA. I mean, whatever they could, And okay, so we'll go a little more. Yep, there's Taylor running to his closet. See if this will play.
911, what's your emergency? Hello, Rex, I'm a double type 4 and I need to shoot up the case. Hello? You still there? To me, please.
Yeah, 911 calls are public record in Florida. So we'll just keep going along.
Was that person killed?
We don't even know who that person was. When you get a 911 recording, they do redact out who the caller is and what their address is. Like if they say their name and location, they'll bleep that part out, but then you get the whole back and forth exchange. All right. Okay. Scott Peterson is the school resource officer who is armed, who did a lot of running around outside the freshman building and basically for 48 minutes stayed in this one position. And later when he gave a sworn deposition, he said I wasn't positive that it was shots fired, and I wasn't sure where it was coming from. I thought maybe it was the freshman building. Well, we eventually get their dispatch back and forth, and we hear Scott Peterson saying, shots fired, freshman building, 1400 building. It's like, okay. So, this should have never happened because about 2 years before this school shooting, we had a shooting at the airport and 5 people were killed. And during that shooting, we found out our county, our sheriff system, our 911 system was not in sync all across the county and with the different agencies. So the school is in the Broward Sheriff's Office jurisdiction, but they're closest to the city of Parkland, which has its own police force. So those 911 calls were going to Parkland or to the Coral Springs police, and not to the sheriff's office, who were the first major responders. So it was just like, it just seemed like every possible screw up. So we can listen to this one too.
911, what is your emergency?
Yes, I just got a call from Douglas High School. A female in line, I believe there's a shooter at the school.
Okay, at Douglas High School? Or
Yes,
what
in
city?
Parkland. It's 911.
Okay. 5901 Pine Island?
Yes.
Okay, let me see if they're working anything there. And second-hand information from a student?
A female called in. It sounded like possible shots in the background. I think I heard 5 or 6 in 2 different bursts.
When they finally released all the 911 calls, I mean, it was dozens. My assignment that day was to listen through them all and write a story, daily story. The one person who did rush toward the trouble, Chris Hickson, got offed, got killed. While Peterson and Medina are out there on their golf carts. So yeah, Chris Hickson, he was nearby at Building 12. Yeah, he entered the double doors at the west end of the hall, runs toward Cruz. Let's scroll down some more. Peterson finally ends up over there, draws his gun, but fails to go into the building. Oh, and here we go. Here's Peterson.
17 Juliet 3, 17 Bravo 3, 17 Bravo 4. Juliet 3, we have possible, I think we got possible shots fired, 1200 buildings. Attention units in District 15, possible shots fired at 5901 Pine Island Road at Stoneman Douglas High School. Possible shots fired at Stoneman Douglas High School.
Okay, let's keep on going down. So we were able to actually trace his actual path, his footsteps, even where he would walk up and turn back around, and we were able to really piece it all together. And I think it was mainly through the commission, the MSD commission's reports, but they weren't into identifying anyone by name, any of the victims by name. It was we had to kind of go through and figure that out. It was victim 1 or victim 2, and we were able to eventually piece this together, who was where, and we knew the Alyssa and Elena and Alex, we knew they were killed in English class, 14-year-olds. So once we compared what we were getting to information we already knew, that's how we were able to start really detailing it. So 11 killed, 13 wounded on the first floor. Second floor. Some of the teachers probably heard the gunfire.
That's the shooter we see.
Yep. Some teachers probably hear the gunfire below and had taken steps to protect their children. They had covered the windows in classrooms with like paper, and so the shooter couldn't see in. And a lot of them brought the kids into what they call like a safe corner, like, you know, where they could farthest, and they were all huddled together. And when I did what went right on the second floor, I interviewed students and teachers, and they said they were in there and they could hear him like trying the door and mumbling to himself, like, oh, no one's here, you know, just some, and there all this. Yeah, one of his first like things is he like calls for them to shut down the streets in the intersection instead of like get over here and let's get in that building. So you had all these first responders that were showing up. We're like, oh, okay, I'll go deal with the intersection. So yeah, Peterson's still the only law enforcement. Oh, this breaks my heart. Okay. Yeah, so third floor doesn't know what's going on. They can't really hear. The blasts of the gunfire makes it so smoky, the fire alarms all go off. And then, so all the kids on the third floor think there's a fire and we need, or, you know, we're having a drill, but this is weird. We just had a drill a couple days ago, but okay. And they all go out in the hallway. And one of the kids starts going down the stairwell running, and he sees the shooter coming up, and he runs back and he's like, go back, go back, go back. Well, when they go back, that's the hallway. And so they're like, teachers are trying to get their kids in rooms and lock the doors, and some of the kids were trapped in the hallway and got killed. And one of the teachers who was at his door trying to lock it as his kids got in, he got killed. Yeah, about 20 people were stranded in the hallway. And they're out there blocking traffic.
Tonya, does the school have a public address system? Could someone in the administrative office have gone on the PA and warned?
Well, yes, there could have been a code red, but nobody called the code red. Medina says the reason he didn't was because he wasn't sure it was that serious or dangerous, and he didn't want to be that guy who called the code red when, oh, it was just he didn't want to But then when they did finally call a code red over the system, the alarms were all going off, so they couldn't hear it. Okay, let's see what this is. Oh yeah, this guy then.
Daniel, you want your shots fired on the football field. Shots fired on the football field.
Shots fired by the football field, heard.
Inaccurate. Sends everybody on a goose chase over there. Oh, the restrooms were locked on the third floor because students had been vaping in them. And we were able to figure out that Joaquin Oliver was, he was out there trying to get in the bathroom. And the kids in one of the classrooms, I interviewed a girl in the third floor story, and she said, she said at first, they could hear the sound. It sounded like rattling metal or something from far away. And she said they looked at each other, and the teacher, they're like, and then it got closer and closer. And she said then the gunfire was so loud in the hallway, it sounded like their door was like wide open. It didn't sound like they even closed the door. He shot through the window. Glass like cut the kid next to her, and the teacher got cut. And as they're all hiding and huddling, she said we could hear a boy who was in agony in the hallway. And she's like, we knew we'd been shot. And like every time he would cry out more, we'd all like look at each other. They, couldn't go there. Oh wait, let's go back up. Meadow and Kara. Meadow her body was on top of Kara's as if she was trying to protect her. Jamie, she got shot as she was trying to run down the stairwell. Yeah, this teacher. Oh yeah, Peter Wang also in the stairwell. He then part of his plan, it seems, was to go up into this teacher's lounge, and as everybody was rushing away from the attack, luckily hurricane glass prevented the bullets from actually making it out there. Keep going. We could keep going. Yeah. Deputies, I don't know, they were scared or what. They just like, we have one guy who, he didn't go on campus until 10 minutes after he had parked his car. And he stood at his trunk and was dawdling, putting on his bulletproof vest, and like he can hear shots being fired.
Do you have video of that?
No.
So how do you know that?
Through sworn statements. Every responder got interviewed in the end. And, they talked about, I got there about this time, and then we'd hear radio transmissions, and we could take it down to basically seconds.
Tonya, there was a body cam video of him at his trunk getting his vest.
Oh, there was. That's right. We do finally have body cams are coming. Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Dorothy. You did do homework. So this kind of presentation, if you guys know how to do this and make this, I don't understand it. To me, it's magic. I don't even know how you start to create this. But there's jobs for that, there's demand for that, and we keep getting good ones and they get hired away. So I hope J schools are really, really teaching these skills. Oh yeah, here we go. Okay, let's go on down. So yeah, Cruz gets out and they think he's still in the building because, well, let's go down a little bit. Well, this will explain what happens. We keep going.
How long did it take for the...
Right here. Fooled by video delay. No one realized that the cameras are on a 20-minute delay. So they thought they were watching real time, and they thought the shooter was still in the building.
How long did it take for the emergency personnel to arrive at the school?
I don't remember that. I don't.
How about the police and sheriffs?
They were there quick. They just.
So there wasn't a delay in that response?
Not really. I mean, there was dispatch problems. There was, but that wasn't the biggest issue. This was awful. This was just awful. When we learned this, we're just, you gotta be kidding me. How could every possible thing go wrong? Captain Jan Jordan, it was over. She didn't know what to do. So let's keep going. No command post, no clear command post. We don't know who's in charge. Coral Springs finally shows up and they charge in. They just they did it like you're supposed to do it. And they were the first ones in the building. Let's go on down. Keep on going. More bad info. First deputy inside, more officers rush in. Dreamlike, evacuation, gunman long gone. Okay, let's keep going. Cruz is on the move. So Cruz does is he, gets rid of his weapons. He's in an ROTC uniform, that burgundy shirt and black pants. And as the building's being evacuated, he goes and blends in with them all and just goes on the evacuation and goes to a Walmart and McDonald's. All right. Keep going down. We'll go more. Scott Peterson, final classroom entered. Okay, I guess we have to go on to a different, it's not embedded in this, but yeah, next slide, I guess.
We have a couple minutes remaining.
Okay, let's go. I want to get to the Nicholas Cruz videos on his cell phone. This is a whole part I'd like to talk about, but one of our public records requests from the school district, it came like pages and pages just blacked out. But an awesome reader. So we got the blacked out version. They banged up a story real quick. We're really big. 3 graphs. Get 3 graphs up as fast as you can. And so they had up, and they were still working on the story. A reader called in and was like, if you copy all and paste it into like a Word document, it's not redacted at all. We unredacted it at like 7 o'clock at night. They rewrote their story and like, oh my God. And then the school board wanted to sue us. So let's keep going. Oh, let's go back to the other one. Where are the videos coming through today? Dorothy? Okay, let's, we don't want to go through the. So these were all discussions we had. We had a lot of pushback eventually from especially the kids and a lot of the families about naming Nicholas Cruz constantly and having his picture on the front page constantly. And so we did start to, try to be more sensitive about that. And I think we all backed off from using his name when it's really not necessary. Like we can write stories and I'll just call him the gunman or the shooter. And had to explain that, if we're covering a court hearing, we have to name him. But we realized also there are instances where we don't have to. Jail mail is public record in Florida. There's all these girls in love with Nicholas Cruz, sending him love letters in jail. And so that story did really, really well, but it was really controversial. People are like, why? What'd you have to, I want to read that story.
Let me ask, who, if you had to do over again, who would you like to interview who refused or was unavailable?
Just more of the parents. And also, this was a story I wanted to do, with the editors didn't latch onto it. At first, it was only dads that we heard from for weeks. We weren't seeing any of the moms. I was really wondering about that, why? Is there a theme there? Is there a reason? And it was and it continues to be mostly the dads are the voices we hear.
Were you ever able to interview members of Cruz's family?
No, but my best friend Paula, his mom had died in November. And then this was in February. So he was living with a family. They took him in. The kid he knew from school, this poor Sneeds, took him in. They had weapons too. They knew he had weapons. They said he could have them there if he kept them in this locked closet. And they were in there, but that's who he was living with when he did this. And because they got a lawyer, and that lawyer loves media attention. He gave Paula a call and was like, "Hey, I'm representing the Sneeds," and she's like, "Oh my God, can we do an interview?" And he arranged it, and they had like a sit-down hour interview, and that was early on, and that was like everybody used that story too. That was a big scoop.
What kind of a consent process did you go through to interview the children? Did you have to contact the parents?
Yeah, no, we didn't do that.
You didn't
We just didn't do that. I mean, I don't
get any flack for that?
No. And for a while, I would just go to school every day when school was out and just park and hang out in the student parking lot and try to talk to kids and try to gather phone numbers and just, grow our base of sources. Because, these becomes the same two dads all the time or the same, kids all the time, and you want to vary that.
If you'll excuse me, I'm going to put on my former teacher hat here, because there are members of the torch staff right here. Now that you've had this celebrity come and talk about this terrible situation, those are two reasons to run a story. How would you localize this story, David?
How would I localize the story? When you say localized, you mean make it central to something like Lane, like with us? I mean, localizing the story would be pretty hard for me. Coming from where the origins of all the shooters and the birthplaces are, how relative is the shooter to the community? How relative, like you said, he was in a family from after his mother passed away, how relative they are to the community and the people. I mean, I'd be focusing mostly on the people and the lives lost.
I mean, how would you localize it for LCC?
For LCC? Yeah, so if this happened, something like here, my first question is security, and for those, very beginning of your story, how it was the man who was just standing outside and made eye contact with him. I'd be trying to contact the local police officers and the other local security agents. I mean, there's campus police.
Mm-hmm.
There's a whole bunch of other security personnel on campus.
Do you think that the students here know what to do in case?
That's what I was saying. Next, we'd be going to the backup plans and what students know to do in a situation like that. That was horrific hearing about the fire alarm that brought all the kids out of the first. Nobody was prepared. Nobody was. And how I would want to know what the administration's plans were. Anybody in charge of the students. I feel like there should be a better plan in form. I mean, right now being a student and hearing about this, there's never been anything in my face about preparation for any kind of crime or a severe situation like that.
Does LCC have a Code Red policy?
I've never even heard of their codes. what would entail a code red from a code blue? I wouldn't know.
MSD principal didn't know what it was.
No.
And if you can think about the volume of students that we could have on campus at any one time, it would be most pertinent that they would know the difference between a code red or any other code or a fire alarm.
Yeah.
Because with the mass of people moving in either one direction, that's promised land of damage and in fact increases threat instead of reduces threat, especially
Gave them more targets.
Yeah.
Is there a role for student government to play in your when you're asked questions?
I feel like student government should be in charge of informing the student body because they do a lot more representation for the administration, for the students. There are a lot of the middlemen and people that are supposed to convey messages to us. I feel like a lot of people were misinformed for an attack like this. It wasn't necessarily misinformation, but just no information. I mean, we just had the weakest alarm for an earthquake on campus. Like, it was supposed to be for the big one, but nobody knew what was happening. A bunch of lights flashed and an alarm happened and nobody moved. That was about what happened. And in a situation like this, I believe the exact same thing would happen. Nobody's really prepared. And I think a lot of that falls on administration and would trickle down to student government. But I still wouldn't feel like student government would bear the largest weight.
I wonder if your security cameras are on a delay.
They're actually, we were talking about this as a story. There's actually a lot of blind spots. The center building doesn't have much security cameras. The whole stairwell is not surveilled, under surveillance. There's only half of this courtyard is under surveillance, and we've had to look into some issues like that. Last year I was talking with that. I got a lead about some really sketchy men were on the elevators and planning routes for things and then being hush-hush about it, and then we found them trying to tamper with locks on the upper center floor, and then nothing came of it, and they disappeared and they graduated and they moved on. We haven't even had to worry about it again, but it definitely raised some issues, and I've talked about that with our student government. And this precinct student government has a few military personnel on them, and they are very high-key about increasing security. But as far as student information and being informed as a student, I feel like that hasn't increased. And after watching something like that, definitely is on my mind. It's hard not to be anymore.
Anyone else have any questions? We have to leave, I'm sorry to say.
I'll go ahead and shoot a few questions out, though. We got time.
Besides the pushback from the families that were saying, we don't want you to post the picture, we don't want to post the name, what was the other biggest pushback you got from what primary group of people?
Well, it was the agencies. It was the school district and the sheriff's office where we were having the hardest time getting information.
Did you ever run into any political pushbacks, like, for instance, like gun ownership groups, gun ownership?
Oh, that's all going on too. I mean, that's an undercurrent, yeah. The NRA lobbyist in Tallahassee, Marion Hammer, she's a former national president. She owns the Capitol.
Does that make it difficult to make reporting a little bit?
It didn't hamper the reporting, but it definitely poses problems as far as any legislation.
Right.
So as we were talking about this a little earlier, and being a journalist, you're part of the media, and a lot of people will talk out about how they just want us to be afraid, or they are just trying to, do digging where there's no story or anything like that. How do you feel like a role like that? How do you feel about your role in a story like this? Do you ever get backlash about people trying to say that you're just being super liberal, or you have a political bias on everything? And
Not like bias-wise, but more like, why do you guys just keep going at this? Why don't you just leave it alone?
what's your response to that?
There's questions unanswered. There's information. We need to find out what happened. It's of the utmost public interest to know and understand what happened and why and how.
You said something earlier about this topic, about how healing can only happen, and I kind of missed. I was trying to write it down. And I missed it.
Okay.
Do you remember what it was?
Yeah, that's actually part that I actually wrote out and wanted to read word for word. Yeah, I'll read that again. Okay, here we go. So at the Sun Sentinel, we were seeking truth. Truth about how and why 17 staff and students could be slaughtered in a school considered the safest in Florida. It was our duty to help the community and the country minimize the risk of recurrence. Healing, we believed, could occur only if underlying problems were exposed and explained. And from the outset, we were met with resistance and secrecy. We exposed a number of sheriff deputies who failed in their responsibilities that terrible day. We revealed the shocking number of people who failed to lock down the school during the shooting. We explained how the FBI mishandled tips about the school shooter. And our mission was not to place blame. Our mission was to unearth what we could learn from a tragedy with such an eye-popping list of missed warning signs. Any other questions?
What about this makes you the most proud as a journalist? A story like that.
Repeat the question, please.
What about the outcomes and at this stage where the story is? It's been a fair amount of time now. What about it makes you the most proud to be a journalist?
My proudest part has been that we did play a role that the families felt was beneficial to them, and they were finding out things that otherwise they couldn't. We were helping to inform, the victims' immediate families. That meant a lot to us. That meant a lot to
Do
me.
you think they would have been otherwise kept in the dark if you guys were the ones who chose it? Or do you think eventually it would have been leaked, or probably never?
I mean, maybe eventually, if this thing goes to trial ever, things would come out. But if we weren't digging into every sworn statement, maybe they'd never have known Medina saw Nicholas Cruz pull up in the Uber. Some people didn't realize that, like, Joaquin was trapped in the hallway and pounding on a locked bathroom door. We were informing people. We were letting them know really, really, where the breakdowns were.
I mean, I know personally on a story like this, it would be hard to not get very emotionally involved and to stay objective. Do you ever find it hard or conflicting?
I'm all about emotion. That's how you get a good story. So feel it and draw it out of others. I've cried on assignments. Try not to bawl and but I've cried on assignments. Try to minimize it. But yeah, I get my best satisfaction from what I call trying to strike a chord. And I mean strike an emotional chord. And if, as a writer, I made you giggle or laugh, or I pissed you off and you cussed and threw the paper, or you made a phone call, or you took some action, or maybe you just got goosebumps and your eyes welled up, that's when I think I've done a good job. If I feel like my story has the elements that I know it's going to do that to some readers, that's what I like. Some people are, like, a lot of our, my colleagues are out, investigative reporters are like, let's find the corruption and, get people arrested and indicted. If that happens along the way, I think that's fantastic, but that's not my goal. I want to tell stories of the human condition. And I don't like to write reports. Reports are boring. Stories, people want to read stories. And I say, mine the emotion, when that makes stories richer. But you definitely, as far as you have to dial back your feelings on gun laws, when you write about those stories. I tend to find what I try to do, if I'm reporting on a story that I know I really, really feel this way about it, I push really hard to come across almost like I feel this about it, so that I feel like it's pushing me in the middle. Yeah. Anything else? Well, find me on Twitter. I'm on Facebook, and we need to become Facebook friends. And all my social media, it's all open, so if you don't want to friend me or whatever, you can still look and check it out. I post my stories a lot. Facebook I consider more of friends and people I know. Twitter's just like the world and put it out there. If you have any questions, email me, ask me. I mean, I love collaborating and working with students. And Google our Sun Sentinel and what our package, our prize-winning package, and go through and watch the videos and read the stories. And if you were going to read one of my stories out of that entry, read the third floor story. I'm very, very proud of that story.
That was a good one.
Thank you so much, Tom.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm happy to be here.